Good evening, everyone. First of all, it is absolute pleasure and an honor to not only be sharing the dais with such luminaries, but to be sharing the entire auditorium with such luminaries. So thank you so much. Thank you. And I must begin by thanking the organizers and the NP, Saiji, and of course Padmanji. Thank you so much for translating it. Krishnanji, Professor Srinivasan, and of course publisher Praveen and Balaji. It is not just, as I said, a pleasure, it is also an honor to be here. And when Sai introduced and said we were thinking of what next project should NDNP have, and we said we already have a 100-page atom bomb that Ranganathan ji wrote. I was thankful she didn't say 100-page hydrogen bomb because somebody else is exploding hydrogen bombs, as you know, Rahul Gandhi. So as to what the intensity of the explosion is, we can all see. But I'm most thankful about the journey that this book has taken. And it's not just with pleasure that I say this. I say this with, I have to admit, a bit of, how can I say it, if one is happy at being astonished, that is the expression that I have. Because I'll tell you what has happened. As Praveen ji said, now I think upwards of 120,000 copies of Hindus in HINDURASHTRA have been sold. But it's not just the number of copies, including the various translations that have been sold. It is also the fact that how I wrote it and why I wrote it. I wrote it because I wanted to open the eyes of the people who hate Hindus and Hinduism. And then I realized that they would never buy this book because they know what they're saying. They are saying it with an agenda. They have a propaganda and they want to spread that propaganda against Hinduism and against Hindus. So it would be, as they say, preaching to the Pope. Because of course they know the truth and yet they lie. So my intended audience was wrong. And then I realized as the sales went up and they skyrocketed, and Praveen told me about from various parts of India the news coming in, I realized that the real audience were you and me. Because our eyes were closed. And you identified with this book because even I didn't know half of the things that I wrote in there couple of years previous to when I wrote it. We were all swimming in this ocean, grand ocean of ignorance, and I dare say we still are. And so something beautiful happened, a switch happened, that the people for whom I wrote the book, the leftists and the communists and the darbaris, that, hey, you are wrong, look at this. They didn't buy this book. They've never reviewed this book. But the book has sold upwards of 120,000 copies, and incidentally, all the royalties that I get from the book, as I had said, they go to Hindu causes. And till now, 13.5 lakh rupees have been given to Hindu causes. And the beauty of Hindus and Hindu organization is that a third of those, when once accidentally I publicized that this bunch of quanta of royalty goes to that organization, they asked me to remove their name. They say we work in the background. We don't want, so a third of those do not want them to be named publicly. So I am eternity grateful to this civilization to have given us this amazing philosophy called Hinduism that still prospers and will prosper, irrespective of everyone who tries to eradicate Sanatana Dharma. This is the land, in fact, where the person who promised to eradicate Sanatana Dharma one of the most ardent followers of Sanatana Dharma is his own mother. So that itself tells you that Sanatana Dharma can never be eradicated. Incidentally, I'm also very thankful that I know this is the land where, I might say things that may land me in trouble. So I'm very happy to see a lot of lawyers in the audience. And I hope they would represent me pro bono in case such a thing happens. But I'm also very thankful to Professor Srinivasan when he said, rightly so, that the BJP and the right-wing ecosystem not only can take criticism, it loves criticism. Thank you. That's very important. That is something which the communists and the Congressies, they hate. We know that, starting from our first dictator, Jawaharlal Nehru. But it took a couple of seconds to register that, but that is absolutely true. So, sir, I will hold you to that. I hope you don't regret saying that, because I think criticism is important, because criticism does not allow you to escape reality. This book, as I said, is no longer meant for its intended audience. This book is loved by its real audience, and the real audience is asking the question. And the question is as follows. Yes, you have opened our eyes. Yes, you have woken us up. And yet we can't do anything to remove the injustice. So was it better that we were asleep? Was it better that we were wallowing in ignorance than for you to come along and shake us up and wake us up and then say, well, you can't do anything? That is the choice that we are confronting right now as a society and as a country. The Hindu candle is burning at both ends, and the wax is melting. And at one end is appeasement, and at the other end is discrimination. And if it was just one end, it would have slowed the burning of the candle, the melting of the wax. But right now, it's not just that it is at both ends, it is being speeded up at both ends. I will come to the discrimination that the book talks about. But before that, I want to talk about the first end from where the Hindu candle is burning, which is appeasement. Now, Hindus as a society have become so used to minority appeasement that we don't really mind it. And to be honest with you, every political party cutting across party lines, even Professor, the BJP, panders to this thing called appeasement. And Hindus didn't mind it because, yes, it does affect you. You feel a bit bad that why is just one particular community being appeased. But people realize this is the cycle of elections and this is what politicians do. And if a little bit of money preferentially or subsidies are going to one segment of the society, it's all right. But what the society didn't realize, that appeasement is like cancer. And when it spreads through various stages. And each progressive stage gets murkier and darker and more dangerous. So while the first stage of appeasement was fine, it was welfare, and people didn't really mind it, that preferentially there was welfare that was going towards the minorities. It very quickly went to the next stage, the stage 2, which was wokefare. And now it is at stage 3, which is warfare. And that is when the Hindu candle is burning, and the speed at which it is burning is alarming. Now, I don't need to talk about the welfarism that happened through the face of appeasement. We all know that. You know the preferential, in fact, a sitting prime minister even said that Muslims have the first claim or first right to resources. It was almost enshrined, if not in our constitution, then in the manner of thinking, the way the government thought. I don't need to talk about the various preferential schemes, you had the Hajj subsidies, you had the monthly salaries to imams and priests, you had the interest-free loans on Waqf land, you had so many other things, iftar parties, that the state was giving money preferentially in the name of appeasement. Free pilgrimages. Incidentally, BJP also promised free pilgrimage in Nagaland recently. To anyone who voted for them, they said, we will send you free of cost to Jerusalem. They didn't even know where Jerusalem is. They said, Ayodhya bheja nahi hai, first you're sending us to Jerusalem. Every political party does it, and to the extent we've become used to it, because it doesn't really hurt us emotionally, psychologically, and physically. What started hurting us is the woke fare. Because encouraged by welfare, the next stage came, where the government and the powers that be said, we are no longer satisfied with giving welfare. Let us start hurting the Hindu psyche as well. And that is where, through cinema, through art, through culture, through school textbooks, through naming of the roads, through naming of the cities, we started to eulogize the villains as heroes and made our heroes as villains. That is what is woke fare. And that became damaging to the Hindu psyche to such an extent that the Hindu started self-loathing. The Hindu started on a process of self-deprecation, on criticizing its own civilization, his own upbringing. He started rationalizing the fact that a barbarian who murdered 4.6 million Hindus, who decapitated our gurus, we had roads named after him, Aurangzeb. We had cities named after him. The Hindu rationalized that the greatest university in the world, Nalanda, that was burnt by an invader Khilji, Bakhtiyar, and the library that was full of 9 million books took 6 months to burn down. It's almost as if a civilization was burned down. And we were okay with the fact, we are still okay with the fact, that the nearest railway station to Nalanda is named after that barbarian who burned Nalanda, Bakhtiyarpur. That is the psychological damage. Of course, it started much before Jawaharlal Nehru, when we became independent, when at the consecration of Somnath, Nehru almost forbade the president to go and visit Somnath and its consecration, saying, I fear Hindu revivalism. As if a Hindu realizing what true Hinduism is would be something that would be fearful for the country. And it started much before that, when you had Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi and all the, starting from the Mopla thing, Khilafat movement. I do not go into that, all those things. But the fact is that it continued. It continued beyond Jawaharlal Nehru. It continued beyond Indira Gandhi. It continued beyond Congress. It is continuing. And that is why admiration can turn into anger. When the eyes are open and you realize the grave mistakes that were done by Nehru, Gandhi, Indira, Rajiv, and appeasement and pandering, why are those mistakes still continuing? And a very pertinent example, and Professor was very right in mentioning Vande Mataram. We celebrated just yesterday, day before yesterday, the 150th anniversary of that song. And Prime Minister Modi very rightly talked about the awful fact that Jawaharlal Nehru, on Jinnah's demand, curtailed the two most immortal paragraphs of Vande Mataram, so that it doesn't offend the Muslims and Jinnah. What is Vande Mataram? Without realizing that it's no ordinary song. It defines who we are as a people, as a country. It is an umbilical cord that connects us to this land that we call motherland. And you truncate the most iconic paragraphs that talk about the symbolism of Goddess Durga, Goddess Lakshmi, and Goddess Saraswati, the three most glorious endowment of our civilization towards us. And you truncate it. So thank you, Prime Minister, for telling us that it was truly truncated. But then I ask you, why has it remained truncated in the last 11 years? That is the purpose of the book. The purpose of the book is, when your eyes have been opened, is for us, and not just you. When I say you, I include myself in you, because even I didn't know half the things, as I said, that I wrote about, the discrimination, appeasement that is happening. We need, as a society, to ask this question. Yes, thank you for telling us that injustice has happened. But we want to ask you, you are in power, why is this injustice continuing? And it is not just a song, and I'll come to that. The appeasement has now transgressed from welfare to wokefare and to now warfare. What do I mean by that? When it goes to warfare, it directly hurts us as a society, as a country. When you see, for pandering to the vote bank, you are actually literally releasing terrorists. Coimbatore bombers were released by the DMK government. It's not just a question of that they were released. It's a question that some of them were released despite the Supreme Court denied them bail and said these people cannot be set free. Even bail was denied, and yet you had the bombers released. And the pretext of the release, let no one say that we did not think of Muslims. This was the pretext. You've seen in Karnataka, during Hubli riots, when some AIMIM corporators and many Muslims were arrested and booked, the Congress government of Karnataka has removed those charges. This is what is happening. And all through the length and breadth of the country, you have SDPI, you had PFI, you had so many other cases. It is now directly linked to warfare. Warfare is when there is no discrimination, or the line that separates appeasement from discrimination is blurred. When you actually start promulgating anti-Hindu laws, anti-Hindu acts, that is when you transgress that boundary. And that has happened. Now let me come to the other side of the Hindu candle that is burning, which is discrimination, which is what the book talks about. And I don't need to go into the detail about those and charting them out, but Praveen asked me, are you thinking of writing? I think the time has come for us to write the next edition of Hindus in Hindurashtra. And I said, what would I write? 10th class citizens? 11th class citizens? We should have become at least from 8th class citizens to 6th class or 5th class citizens, if not 2nd class citizens. The river is flowing in the opposite direction. We might be citizenless. Maybe the next edition of Hindus in Hindurashtra would be, there are no Hindus in Hindurashtra. Right? As many people say, there would be no Hindus in Bangladesh in 30 years. This is a scientifically projected assessment. So the fact of the matter is, leave alone appeasement. Why are we as a society so comfortable with the discrimination that is happening against the Hindus? Hindus don't mind appeasement. But we as a society do mind when we are discriminated against. And now the situation has come to such an extent that I am no longer, in fact, publicly asking for the discrimination to be removed, because I know it is not going to be removed. What I want is that discrimination to be applied to other societies, other communities as well. Maybe that is the solution. So I know that the BJP is not going to remove state control over the temples. If it wanted to, it had 11 years to do so. That was one of the planks in 2013. But now the BJP government controls more Hindu temples than even Congress did. Why? That is the question. But more importantly, now that I know that state control over Hindu temples will not be removed, I want state to control mosques and churches. Because if you call a state that controls Hindu temples as a secular state, Why won't you continue to call that state a secular state if it controls mosques and churches? But I know you won't. The moment the state decides that it will start to control mosques and churches to the extent that it controls 110,000 Hindu temples, there'll be a civil war in this country. This is the extent to which the Hindu has been pummeled. It's not just about giving us preferential treatment. It is that you are giving us discrimination. When I talk about the other part of not just that in Germany, do you find a German refugee? Is there a British refugee in exile in Britain? Then why are there 700,000 Hindu Kashmiri exiles in Hindustan? Yes, the Congress is responsible for not doing anything about it. But then do we have the Congress rule in the last 11 years? Why are only 5,000 Kashmiri Hindus returned to Kashmir? And you know this for a fact. Illegal immigration is not just a ticking time bomb. Demography change is not just a ticking time bomb. It is now a hissing time bomb. Because you know what happens when the demography of any place changes. Very soon you start enacting the laws of that very community. You have Sharia laws. There was demand for death by stoning by a sitting chief minister of Kashmir recently. You have schools in Jharkhand that no longer have Sunday as a holiday but Friday. There are so many other examples. Cinema theaters were shut down in Kashmir. You've seen in other areas. Just recently there was a protest defying a high court order to allow Hindus to celebrate their festival. 500 Christians sat down on a dharna saying we will not allow this. Demography changes the laws and the rules that govern us as a society, that govern the society, and that is dangerous. Our openness, our pluralism, that is an endowment, direct endowment of Hindu civilization, is going to disappear. It is disappearing right before our eyes, and we are not doing anything about it. Let me tell you a very disturbing example. And the disturbing example is in April of 2025, there were large-scale demonstrations in Coimbatore in protest against the Waqf Act amendment. You might have seen streets were blocked. And very recently, a whole village was claimed by Waqf to be on Waqf land. That village included 1500-year-old Hindu temple. So somebody is claiming that a 1500-year-old Hindu temple is on Islamic land when Islam is only 1300 years old. How is that possible? In fact, I hope this is not on Waqf land, sir. We might be standing on Waqf. Jokingly, once I told Navika, this studio might be on Waqf land. It turned out to be on Waqf land. 71% of Delhi is on Waqf land. Now, I don't mind people claiming anything. The Waqf board can claim the moon. And then we can have a Chandrayaan Mission 4 to actually deliver them that. I don't mind it. You have a property dispute. Somebody claims something. Somebody denies that claim. What is the natural progression? You go to the court. This happens the world over. That is how property disputes are settled. But not in this case. You have made an act that constitutionally mandates a tribunal to be set up, an executive and a legislature to aid that tribunal, for you to adjudicate as to whose primary claim it is. You've made a parallel government of executive, legislature and judiciary to decide on Waqf land. And in the last 10 years, 20 lakh acres has been claimed by Waqf. We are just sitting ducks. And I'm no longer asking for the Waqf Act to be abrogated because I know no government has the guts to do it. Even the BJP government does not have the guts to realize the discrimination. It brought in an amendment. Yes, good, perfect is the enemy of the good. So amendment is better than having the original Waqf Act. But even In the amended Waqf Act, there are dozens of draconian clauses that are blatantly discriminatory. For example, the clause where it says the state governments have to pay the Waqf board the cost for assessing a land. This violates constitutional articles and principles of a so-called secular state. We are paying tens of thousands of crores for someone to determine that a 1500-year-old temple lies on 1300-year-old Islamic land. This is what it has come to. But now, I'm not asking for the Waqf Act to be abrogated, because I know it would never be. I'm asking, at least, if you can't remove the discrimination against Hindus, then apply the same discrimination to Muslims as well. Have a Sanatan Act. And through that Sanatan Act, where each and every clause would be the same as the Waqf Act, any Hindu can claim any land to be Sanatan land. So the Jama Masjid can be claimed to be on Sanatan land. Well, every mosque is technically on Sanatan land. And then what would the Muslims do? The Shahi Imam would be outraged. Yes, reasonably. And he would say, I'm going to the court, but say, no. You can't go to the court. Come to the Sanatan tribunal first. We will make you eat the same medicine that you have been dishing out to us for 50 years. Within 24 hours, the same Shahi Imam would say, let us abrogate the Waqf Act. This is what it has come to. I don't need to go into the judgments that are blatantly anti-Hindu, where not once but twice the Supreme Court denied reopening of the cases of atrocities and criminalities against the Kashmiri Hindus that faced a genocide, reasoning that too much time had elapsed, so we cannot reopen those cases. And 6 months after they said this judgment, the Supreme Court ordered an SIT to be set up to look at the cases of criminalities and atrocities against the Sikhs in 1984 genocide. That happened 6 years before the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. I know this happens. It's not a question of that the judiciary promulgates anti-Hindu things. We've seen what the Chief Justice, former Chief Justice, talked about. Go and talk to your Lord Vishnu if you want the head to be reinstated. You see these things. But the question is, this book is asking that yes, laws are anti-Hindus, communities are anti-Hindu, judiciary can be anti-Hindu, legislature can be anti-Hindu. But government that we put in power, are you anti-Hindu? If you're not, why aren't you raising the voice? Did the Prime Minister ever say or comment upon the fact, this blatantly anti-Hindu thing that the judiciary did? No, there was complete silence. That is what the quandary is. And I'll end by saying this as best exemplified by a show of hands. And I'll take to heart what my beloved professor said, that we are open to criticism. So I'm going to test him on that. You see, when the British were ruling us pre-1947, they made a lot of blatantly anti-Indian laws. So many of them. One of the most blatant anti-Indian laws was the act, or in fact the law that is called the Sedition Law, whereby you cannot even say anything against the British government or the government of the time. Then the British left. And then the Congress came, and for 50 years, the same anti-Indian law was there, Sedition Law. So I want a show of hands. How many of you feel that in continuing with the anti-Indian British law, the Congress government was also anti-Indian? Please raise your hands. Almost all the hands have gotten up. So you believe that if an anti-Indian law continues, the government of the time doesn't remove it, that government is anti-Indian. Rightly so. Rightly so. I congratulate you on thinking that. But now I ask you, the Congress, in its diabolical nature, promulgated a lot of anti-Hindu acts. Taking over of the temples was one such act. You had the RTE in conjunction with the 93rd Amendment that puts the onus of giving 25% reservations to economically weaker section only on Hindu-run schools, forcing only thousands of Hindu-run schools to shut down and the Muslim and Christian-run schools to prosper, take in Hindu students. The Congress government brought in the Places of Worship Act, an evil act that disbars Hindus to even knocking at the doors of justice, demanding to reclaim their demolished temples. The Congress brought in the evil Waqf Act. The Congress brought in all these anti-Hindu acts. Now, what would you call a government that has not removed those anti-Hindu acts and those anti-Hindu acts are still continuing? A show of hands. Would that government that continues with those anti-Hindu acts would also be anti-Hindu? Right. I think that answers the question. Much more dangerous than those anti-Hindu acts is the fact that those acts are still continuing. And I hope with the Tamil translation and other translations and the book indeed, we reach a stage where, yes, our eyes are opened, but we start demanding or at least tugging the kurta sleeves of our politicians and asking that, yes, our eyes are opened, but why are we still powerless? Thank you so much.
So to our wonderful audience, here we get the opportunity once in our lifetime. Like how we see ANAND RANGANATHAN ji on the national channels, it is our opportunity to ask him the question and he gets his uninterrupted time, but with a limit of 5 minutes. We've already short our time by 5 minutes. So may we have the question for ANAND RANGANATHAN ji, please. You please stand in your own place and ask the question. Mics are there. They will reach you.
Good evening, sir. This is Srihari from Smriti's Pathshala. So my question to you is that in your book, Hindus and HINDURASHTRA, you state that equality before the law is a key feature for a secular nation. The Uniform Civil Code was meant to ensure that one law for everyone has to be stated, but today it creates division. Many see it as an act and a step towards equality, while others fear it would undermine other religious privileges. Do you think bringing in the UCC now would really promote equality, or would it end up widening the gap between the communities? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. What is this gap amongst communities that we talk of? Should we allow discrimination in the name of diversity? No. The Uniform Civil Code is the ask of not just today, it was the ask of our forefathers who drew up the Constituent Assembly debates from there, the Constitution itself. It is there in the Constitution as a directive principle. It should have been implemented on day one. Leave alone it's not been implemented now. But the fact of the matter is, why shouldn't a country have a Uniform Civil Code? It makes a mockery of justice. It is the most dividing thing in the world that when you have all humans being absolutely equal, and I speak as a scientist, where not just humans, even chimpanzees, their genome is 99.4% identical to humans. I would call myself as a proud ape. And then in this day and age, we are having discrimination amongst human communities because we feel let them enjoy their customs and their practices. We should not trouble them. Whatever their customs and practices. If their customs and practices is to marry a 9-year-old, would you allow that? Would science allow that? If the custom is to marry 7 times, should our society allow it? At the altar of diversity, making peace, we are subjecting this country to pieces. But I'll tell you why even this government has blundered. Because this government has implemented UCC in Uttarakhand. UCC means, it's an acronym, Uniform Civil Code. By definition, it means a civil code that would be applied uniformly to everyone. But then why in that UCC in Uttarakhand, the scheduled tribes are exempt? And now the Muslims will use this as a defense. When the case goes or is heard in the Supreme Court, they will say, well, you can, in the name of UCC, implement it and yet exempt a community. Why shouldn't our community be exempted? So this is the fear of the state and the government, that they know what is the right thing to do. The right thing is to implement the UCC, but they don't have the guts to do it. Thank you. I hope I'm not criticizing the government. Professor has left. I hope he's gone.
Students, please keep the questions short.
Instead of trying to change all the laws to a particular way which you have been expecting, if the face of judiciary is going to be changed, directly will it not have an impact on the entire society? And most of the time I find the retired judges, they say the judiciary is corrupt.
Yes.
But none speak when they are in powers.
Yes, yes.
Is it possible for the face of the judiciary to be changed?
Yes.
I am Balaji Sridhar, advocate here.
You're an advocate?
Yeah.
Are you a retired advocate or are you?
I'm in the helm of my practice.
Thank you very much. No, what you said is absolutely true. And may I say, at the risk of offending some wonderful people who might be retired IAS officers or retired judges, why do they find their vocal cords only after they've retired? You know, this country would be run so much better if they found their voice while they were serving. But I suppose the machinations are such that they are also under the foot of our political establishment, especially the IAS and the civil servants. Because the moment you say something that offends a politician, you're immediately transferred. In fact, the common rule is the more honest you are, the more transferred you would be, which is why Kejriwal was never transferred. But anyway, the question that you asked has to be answered by the Prime Minister directly. And it is a tragedy of this country that 11 years have gone by. And one of the biggest election planks in 2013 was judicial reforms. When you had the NGAC that was passed and the Supreme Court overturned it, what was stopping you from at least talking to the Supreme Court and saying this is unacceptable? When the rest of us, when every segment of the society is elected democratically, either through exams or through merit or through elections, who the hell gives the judges the rights to not have that process for them? And look at the hypocrisy. It's not just there when they want democratically held elections for everybody except their own. When they want reservations in every stream except their own. They want 33% women reservations, they want SC/ST reservations, OBC reservations for every field, but not in higher judiciary. Why? This is the hypocrisy that needs to be exposed more than, because our eyes are opened, sir. You opened your eyes, our eyes. But what good does it do if we don't have the power to act once our eyes are opened? And those who have the power to act, they are deliberately closing their eyes. When you have 53 million, more than the population of Kenya and South Korea, the number of cases that are pending. When in this same judiciary, you have only 20 judges per million Indian population. Forget about what the Judicial Commission has asked for, the Law Commission has asked. America has 155 judges to a million population. And despite having such low numbers of judges per million population, 30% of all High Court judicial positions are right now lying vacant. 21% of all judicial positions across India are lying vacant. There are cases, 120,000 cases are more than 35 years old. 2.25 lakh POXO and rape cases are still pending. 71% of all Indian prisoners are under trials. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but the fact of the matter is this statistic that only I know? No. This statistics is known to the President, to the Prime Minister, to the Home Minister, to the Law Minister, and to the Chief Justice, who does a suo moto at the drop of a hat, but is quiet on all this. So I would want the thing to start from you, sir, at the risk of, at any risk that your law firm might face. You need to take this out. You need to take this out in the open and confront the politicians and the legislature directly. They need to do this change, not us.
Sir, if the power of the review is changed, that the same judge should not review his own judgment, then it is bound to have a big impact on the judiciary. Because no judge is going to accept his own fault in the view. And after all, the power of review is given to him to review in his own chambers, and he passes an order confirming it. Why should we have such a law of power of review being given to a judge, the same judge? He is not going to accept it. If that particular change is going to start there, and if Supreme Court benches are going to be constituted in Calcutta, in Madras and Bombay, and all Supreme Court judges are transferred every year, definitely it is going to have an impact. We need not have the system in the change in law, but if such a position is going to come, bound to have an impact.
Very rightly said, sir, but that's a little bit technical as befitting your field. What I would say is look at the lowest hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit is that it is unacceptable for India to be vying for a Viksit Bharat and having right now 53 million cases pending. That is unacceptable. We need to address that first. At least bring the 20 judges per million population to 100. Make new courts. The government needs to step in massively. Right now, somebody was saying we spend only 0.6% of our GDP on the infrastructure, the judicial infrastructure. Unless we look into that, I'm afraid the wheels of justice are not just grinding slowly, they have come to a halt. Thank you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I'm Yamuna J, and we are the first year students of Amrita International School of Law. And yet to study constitutional law and jurisprudence principles in place. But with your permission, I want to ask a few questions.
Please.
In several judgments like Sabrimala, Shirur Ismail Faruqi, the courts have entered theological domains to decide what constitutes essential principles. Do you believe this doctrine itself is flawed or only the selective application?
Okay, that's a great question. And I speak as a layman. I'm not just a religious person or a lawyer, but whenever in quandary, I think the safest bet is to think of issues scientifically, not just with the scientific rationale, but to see whether there is some scientific rationale that has endowed us with this ability to think about this question. Let me give you two cases in point. The abortion limit. Now, that can be decided by society, but it should not be. When it comes to the health of a person, you have to look and go back to what the science tells you. And I'm proud that in our country, you have science dictating the abortion limit. It is 24 weeks now or whatever. It may change from time to time. But at least you have scientific principles that are telling you that have taken into concern the health of a person, where the judgment affects that person. Again, another case's point is right now, in fact, this debate going on to lower the age of consent for sex from 18 to 16. And you have lawyers like Indira Jaising and others, they're not bringing any scientific rationale at all. Their rationale is that in a changed society, now the time at which children reach puberty has decreased. By that logic, if two children who have attained puberty at 9, should we accept them to have sex at 9? This is no argument. You have to go back to what the science tells you, mentally and physically, the well-being of a person, and then come to these decisions. Likewise, when you talk about anything that is interfering or infringing on the religious aspect of a society, you make a judgment of that. I would say, yes, you need to. Supposing there is intense cruelty that a religion says is the norm of the day? Should we sit quiet? If tomorrow, and this is, for example, Sharia law, you can have decapitation of your limbs as punishment. Should we say that, look, this is prescribed in a religion and our law should have nothing to do with it? No, I think that's wrong. I think basic human rights, basic human biology, basic well-being, mental state, physical state, has to be dictated by scientific principles, and we need to move ahead. Now let me come to Sabrimala, and I think this is one of the, I would say, not just tragedies, perhaps a strong word, but the fact that we accepted it without even any discussion. You had the Shah Bano judgment, right, which was an amazing judgment in not just that it advocated for a UCC to be implemented as soon as possible, but it gave the logical human rights back to the victim Shah Bano. And then you had the Congress, in pandering to appeasement, that the Muslims protested against it, it overturned the Supreme Court judgment. In Sabrimala, was it discrimination or was it perceived discrimination? You have many Ayappa temples where this law does not hold of restriction. This holds here because the deity is celibate and he wants only that prescribed window. And there are many temples where men are allowed entry, women are not. There are equally many temples where men are not allowed entry. So was this discrimination? When in a religion you have temples where women are not allowed and you also have temples where men are not allowed. This was not discrimination. And yet the Supreme Court adjudicated, and yet the pro-Hindu government, Hindutva government, did not overturn this judgment at all. But having said that, in the matters of where you say religion comes in, I am not an advocate for the law taking a back seat or judges taking a back seat, because there could be many draconian, barbarian laws that belong to a particular religion that must not be thrust upon the entire society. Thank you.
I'm audible, right? Yeah. I will keep my question short. So why do Hindus hesitate from talking about atrocities that happened on them?
Why do Hindus hesitate?
Hesitate, yeah. If we want to talk about it, people are not very comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that I think we only have ourselves to blame. But as I said, please remember that for 50 to 60 years, the end result is that we are hesitating to talk about the atrocities. But that has only come about because for 50 years we've been brainwashed into believing that those atrocities either never happened or that some other community was the victim, that we perpetrated atrocities. So our mind, our psyche, as I said, somehow self-loathing and brainwashing were seeped in. I'll give you a couple of examples. When you eulogize a barbarian that committed one of the biggest genocides of 4.6 million Hindus, when you eulogize that barbarian, you rename your cities and your streets after him, Aurangzeb. What else it is but the fact that you don't want Hindus to speak up on the atrocities? And I'm just talking about my experience. When I read the textbooks that I did, I was told that Emperor Ashoka, after he undertook the great Kalinga war and you saw hundreds of thousands of people killed, he was so perturbed by it that he converted to Buddhism. That was the impression. I didn't even know, and I learnt it from Sanjeev Sanyal's book, that Ashoka was already Buddhist 4 or 8 years before he conducted the Kalinga war. This is the sense of brainwash, and where do you end? And then when you have a government where not just such textbooks are continuing, you had the education minister saying, I am proud of not having changed even one comma in such textbooks. Then who do you blame? Do you blame the author who is, spreading falsehood? Or do you blame the minister whose power it is, who has the power to remove those textbooks? That's the thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And let me again, in fact, that's a very pertinent, okay. It's a very pertinent question, because let me not always keep on criticizing the judiciary and the politicians and say he doesn't criticize himself. Let us throw the light back on us as well. And there I'd like to have a show of hands. How many of you remember or, can recall or know what the Azad Maidan riots were? You remember 2011, you had the Rohingya question. How many of you know that iconic photograph of a Muslim man kicking the Amar Jawan Jyoti, the Azad Maidan riots? How many of you know of that? Okay. How many of you, those who know about Azad Maidan riots, know about Khamong Sheikh? No one. So this is our fault. And we can't say that this was written in 1950s and 1960s. Khamong Sheikh was a place in Myanmar where the same Rohingyas for which riots happened to rehabilitate them, and 40,000 are in India right now. Khamong Sheikh is the place where the same Rohingyas perpetrated large-scale Hindu murder. They buried Hindu families alive. They killed them, butchered them. Many of those Rohingyas who did that might be in India right now. But we don't know of Khamong Sheikh. We know only of Azad Maidan riots. Now who to blame? That's the question. The blame lies with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
உலக தமிழ் சொந்தங்களுக்கு வணக்கம். நான் ராஜவேல் நாகராஜன். பேசு தமிழா பேசு வலையொலியுடைய வளர்ச்சிக்கு நீங்களும் உறுதுணையாக இருக்கணும்னு நினச்சிங்கன்னா இந்த வீடியோடைய டிஸ்கிரிப்ஷனில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ரேசர் பே லிங்கை கிளிக் பண்ணுங்கள். அந்த லிங்க்கில் போயிட்டு உங்களுக்கு விருப்பமான தொகையை பேசு தமிழா பேசுவனுடைய வளர்ச்சிக்கு உங்களுடைய பங்களிப்பாக நீங்கள் கொடுக்கலாம். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
பேசு தமிழா பேசு சேனலுக்கு ஆதரவு தந்து கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய பார்வையாளர்களுக்கு வணக்கம்.
அரசியல் ஆன்மீகம்னு மட்டும் இல்லாம இப்போ ஹெல்த்லயும் நம்ம வந்தாச்சு. ஹெல்த் சம்பந்தமான பிரச்சனைகளுக்கும் ஹெல்த் டிப்ஸுக்கும் ஹெல்த் கேருக்கும் இல்ல ஹெல்த் பத்தி ஏதாவது தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னு நினைச்சீங்கன்னா ஹெல்த் குரு சேனல் கண்டிப்பா உங்களுக்கு யூஸ்ஃபுல்லா இருக்கும்.
பேசு தமிழா பேசு சேனலுக்கு கொடுக்கக்கூடிய இதே சப்போர்ட்டை ஹெல்த் குரு யூடியூப் சேனலுக்கும் கொடுத்து அந்த சேனலை சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பண்ணி உங்க நண்பர்களுக்கு ஷேர் பண்ணும்படி கேட்டுக்கிறோம்.
நம்ம ஹெல்த் குரு சேனலோட லிங்கை டிஸ்கிரிப்ஷன்ல தரோம், மறக்காம செக் பண்ணி பாருங்க.